Good evening, I'm Ian Hannamansing. Tonight, vaccine passports and tense moments on the campaign trail. Justin Trudeau faces protesters as an event is cancelled over security concerns. Blocked from the Kabul airport.
There were many soldiers, many armies from Pakistan. They beat everyone.
Thousands of desperate Afghans make a dangerous trek into Pakistan. An explosion levels part of this Ontario town, why residents worry it could happen again. And the North American invasion that's driving Britain, well, nuts.
They love the hazelnut paste.
Inside the fight against the grey squirrel, this is The National. In an election campaign, it's normal for candidates to face critics, even protesters, but far less common is when that outrage prompts a candidate to cancel an event. That is what Liberal Leader Justin Trudeau did tonight, citing security concerns, something he addressed later.
We all had a difficult year. And those folks out protesting, they had a difficult year too. And I know and I hear the anger, the frustration, perhaps the fear. And I hear that. And I know we have to work even harder to be there for each other, to support each other. And we need to meet that anger with compassion.
All of this happened in Bolton, Ontario. That's about 50 kilometers northwest of Toronto. A crowd screaming and making obscene gestures. And something happened to raise the concerns of the RCMP, and the campaign pulled out. As David Cochran shows us, these protests have followed Trudeau on the campaign trail, fueled in part by opposition to COVID vaccines. And today, Trudeau is moving the government's vaccine policy even further.
A campaign stop at a bakery became a security threat. Anti-vaccine protesters yelling and swearing, pushing against the police officers protecting Justin Trudeau. One woman carrying a baby got inside the bakery.
You guys just pushed me to have it on camera.
And had to be escorted out. All of this just hours after Trudeau announced a $1 billion promise to help provinces adopt vaccine passports.
We only get through this pandemic, we only finish with this pandemic if everyone steps up, not just for themselves, but for each other.
In a tense election, it's a wedge the Liberals are keen to play, liking the contrast with Erin O'Toole, who says vaccination and vaccine passports are a matter of choice.
We will support and respect what the provinces decide to do. It is their decision.
The one thing he won't choose, vaccines. He can't even tell his own candidates to get their shots.
But Trudeau's vaccine push has inflamed a small but angry segment of the population.
Please get vaccinated. You're a bum. Don't even look me in the eye. You're half the man I am.
That stalked his campaign at an event in Mississauga to the bakery in Nobleton, where the increase in Trudeau's security was clearly visible. By the time the campaign got to a scheduled rally in Bolton, even that security wasn't enough. The protesters were there in such force, the rally was canceled because Trudeau's security team didn't think it was safe.
We're deeply sorry, folks. Unfortunately, for safety reasons, this event will no longer be taking place here today. Thank you all so much for your support, for everything you're doing.
Well, some incredible scenes there, David. What's the Liberal campaign saying about this?
Yeah, Ian, a lot of the people on the campaign are used to protest. That comes with being in government. That comes with working for the Prime Minister. But they all say this is different. The level of physical aggression is different. The presence of children, including babies, is different. But this is the challenge of campaigning in an election during the time of COVID. If you move your events indoors, you run into public health limits and safety concerns. If you move them outdoors, as the Liberals are doing, you run into security operational issues. And this is what happened tonight. The people who are paid to protect the Prime Minister, no matter who is in the role of Prime Minister, felt it wasn't safe for the Prime Minister to speak in public during an election campaign. So this clearly had a big impact on tonight, and Ian, it will undoubtedly have a big impact on the rest of this campaign, because those protesters and their grievances, they're unlikely to go away soon.
All right, David, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Rafi Boudjikanian is traveling with the Liberal campaign. He joins us now. And Rafi, we heard from David. What are you hearing about the security threat today?
Ian, they're being fairly limited in terms of exactly what the security threat was when Justin Trudeau came out to speak to us at this undisclosed location in Brampton. He, said it was more about the volunteers. He was worried about their safety, and organizers were worried about their safety, and that's why they had to ultimately cancel the event in Bolton. I mean, I can tell you, I was there, and certainly there were far fewer supporters than there were demonstrators. The protesters were very loud, very vocal, screaming things I will not repeat on television, getting into arguments with police officers, insisting, why doesn't Trudeau come out and speak to us? That kind of rhetoric. And for about 90 minutes, the party kept insisting this event is going to go ahead. And finally, we were all huddled together, the journalists, and told, for safety reasons, we are going to cancel this, and you should get on the bus. We'll make an announcement, and then we will leave. And as the bus did depart, some of these protesters walked after the bus, sort of in a celebratory mood, brandishing their signs and chanting victory, that they got the Liberal leader to cancel what he was going to do tonight. I can also tell you that as the bus was driving to this undisclosed location, a couple of staff told us that we were actually being followed. I didn't see it myself, but that's what they told us.
All right, Rafi, thank you. Amid Trudeau's announcement of $1 billion to support the introduction of vaccine passports, another province is about to bring them in. CBC News has learned that Ontario will announce plans for a proof of vaccine next week, a change in policy after both British Columbia and Manitoba announced that a vaccine passport will soon be required to enter some non-essential business, and after Quebec launched a digital app to roll out its own passport system earlier this week. For more on Ontario's vaccine passport plans, Hannah Thibodeau joins us now. And Hannah, what have we learned?
Well, Ian, early next week, Ontario is expected to announce a proof of vaccine certificate, of course, commonly known as a vaccine passport. And this could be used in places like gyms, restaurants, or even movie theaters. Now, sources say the passport will be discussed at a scheduled cabinet meeting on Tuesday. And while some in the Ontario cabinet are opposed, sources say the program will still go ahead. Other provinces are already moving forward with one, including BC and Quebec. They're using smartphone-based vaccine passports with a QR code that can be used in commercial and in public spaces.
So Ontario Premier Ford has repeatedly opposed the idea of vaccine passports in the past. So what's changed?
Well, as you mentioned, Ontario Premier Doug Ford has been saying it was a hard no to vaccine passports in Ontario. On July 15th, Ford said he resisted the idea because he doesn't want to split society, but there has been a lot of pressure on him recently. Local medical officers of health, as well as mayors in some of Ontario's biggest cities, even chambers of commerce have pushed for this vaccine passport. Now, sources are telling me the change is coming for many reasons. First off, public opinion is generally in favor of the passports. There are also rising case numbers of COVID-19 in Ontario and right across the country, driven by the Delta variant. And here's the last thing. Kids are heading back to school, Ian.
All right, Hannah, thank you.
You're quite welcome.
The push for passports comes as the pandemic continues to worsen again. More than 3,700 new cases today. That is the highest single-day number since late May. Average daily new cases have increased by more than 7-fold since last month, but hospitalizations are rising more slowly, double what they were in July. Those very serious cases overwhelmingly among the unvaccinated. Although more than 75% of Canada's eligible population is now fully vaccinated, the combination of the highly contagious Delta variant and far fewer restrictions means cases are rising almost as fast as they were 3 months ago. Alberta's leading the way in that growth with more than 1,100 new cases today. Hospitals are, in some cases, running out of room, forcing the province to announce that it's delaying some non-urgent surgeries. However, as Aaron Collins tells us, Alberta officials haven't said anything else about this rising tide of cases.
The bar is open at this Edmonton nightclub, and after months of uncertainty, the owner here wants to keep it that way.
I would say that it is still hard now. It's just oddly becoming a bit more routine.
A part of that new normal, proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test needed to see a show here, a rule the club, not the province, brought in.
It's something that we didn't necessarily want to tackle on our own. We would have far preferred some sort of provincial or federal legislation.
COVID cases and hospitalizations are again spiking in Alberta, but so far, no move to bring back restrictions. The Premier and his Chief Medical Officer of Health haven't spoken publicly in weeks. The Premier's office says Jason Kenney is taking 2 weeks of holidays, and speaking last month, no sense he saw this fourth wave coming.
Frank, let me be blunt. I think it's time for media to stop promoting fear when it comes to COVID-19 and to start actually looking at where we're at.
Where we're at today is worrisome, according to this expert.
We need to have some leadership around the big policy options, so vaccine cards, mandates, and masks. And also, we need to figure out as a community, how we can get more people vaccinated.
And without action now, some say things could get much worse soon, with as many as 1,000 new deaths from COVID in Alberta in just the next 3 months.
Delta is a game changer, more infectious, and of course, when you put down your guard and you allow this virus to circulate, it's waiting for all of us, unfortunately.
Premier Jason Kenney is set to return from vacation next week. It's unclear when the Chief Medical Officer of Health will emerge again. Official silence as hundreds of thousands of kids are set to head back to school in the midst of this fourth wave. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
Starting tomorrow, Manitoba will make everyone wear a mask at all indoor public spaces, and that's not all.
As of September 3rd, only fully immunized Manitobans will be able to take part in certain events and activities.
Those include going to theaters, restaurants, gyms, and sporting events. The province says it's to protect the more than 400,000 Manitobans who aren't vaccinated, including 170,000 who can get the shot but have not. Health Canada has approved the Moderna vaccine for people aged 12 to 17. It is the second to be authorized for that age group. Pfizer-BioNTech's vaccine was approved for youth back in May. Well, let's turn to Afghanistan now and the increasingly desperate and dangerous situation unfolding there. Tonight, people are still scrambling to get out, but it's getting harder and harder to do that. After yesterday's deadly bombing outside the airport, U.S. evacuation efforts are happening under increased security. Canadian flights, however, are halted, leaving many people trying to get here stranded. The Canadian government's message to them today: don't lose hope. Yesterday's bombing happened at a gate into the airport. It killed at least 169 Afghans and 13 U.S. service members. It was a scene of carnage, but as Carolyn Dunn tells us, many Afghans returned to the airport today, driven by desperation.
Outside the Kabul airport, armed Taliban members are blocking Afghans from getting through. Desperate families are still making their way there, hoping to get onto one of the final flights out. Even after yesterday's deadly blast made it all too clear just how dangerous it is. Today, the Pentagon revealed what it thinks happened and didn't.
We do not believe that there was a second explosion at or near the Barron Hotel, that it was one suicide bomber.
One suicide bomber, believed to be part of an ISIS faction, made their way through this crowd and to the gate. U.S. President Joe Biden hinted at increased but secret extra security protocols now in place.
Got a detailed briefing about yesterday's attacks and the measures they're taking to protect our forces and complete the mission. And we will complete the mission.
Evacuation flights of U.S. citizens, foreign nationals, and Afghan allies have resumed. More than 12,000 people flown out in 24 hours after the bombing. About 500 of those at the request of Canada. But there are hundreds of thousands more who want to leave. And so borders like the one with Pakistan are crushed with people looking to get out. The United Nations is expecting about 500,000 Afghan refugees from this crisis. Inside Afghanistan, food and medicine already running short.
The outside world needs to really step up and remember when we're talking about the ordinary Afghans, they've suffered immensely over the past 40 years from everything you can think of, from earthquakes to massacres to wars to droughts.
And there are real concerns. People who have already been through so much will be left without once Afghanistan's harsh winter sets in. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Washington.
You saw there the scene at Afghanistan's border with Pakistan through which people are trying to flee. Tonight, Jayla Bernstein takes us into the crowd with the story of one family waiting in it.
It is 4 days that they are trying, but unfortunately it's not happened yet.
Mubarak Shah Rahimi's family has spent the last 4 days camped out here along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, squeezed among thousands fleeing on foot, seeking safety. Some, including Shah Rahimi's family, have paid smugglers to help.
They were able to pass the border from Afghanistan to Pakistan, but when they have passed, there were many soldiers, many armies from Pakistan. Then they beat everyone.
And so his family remains in Afghanistan. They are Hazara, an ethnic group that's long been persecuted by the Taliban. Shah Rahimi says he's heartbroken and can't sleep. He shared a message from one family member.
It is a very dangerous situation. It is a very crisis situation. Everybody pushing each other, like women, children, and also old men. It is very bad situation.
He's been watching the crisis unfold from Indonesia, where he lives. He fled the Taliban years ago, and he hopes his family can one day resettle in Canada. But for now,
only the things that are important for them is a safe place.
It's just one of the countless stories of Afghans caught up in the turmoil. This man worked for the Canadian embassy in Kabul until it closed this month. He applied for a visa but never heard back. It's a fear shared by many Afghans fleeing a country they no longer recognize, not knowing what they'll find wherever they end up. Jayla Bernstein, CBC News, Toronto.
Canada has moved some 3,700 people out of Afghanistan on military flights since the beginning of the month, with about 1,500 having arrived now in this country. But an unknown number of Canadians, permanent residents, and those desperate to get here are still stuck. Here's Ashley Burke.
Ahmed Malgari struggling to get a hold of his family in Afghanistan.
Can't reach them.
His sister, aunts, and in-laws all in hiding from the Taliban in this abandoned building. He says they're a target because he worked for the Canadian Armed Forces.
I would say to the Prime Minister and his cabinet that you have failed us, and that is an unforgivable betrayal.
Malgari says he feels his service meant nothing to Canada. That's why Liberal Leader Justin Trudeau's comments today hit a nerve.
They are bragging about the mission that it ended before it's barely began. That is an insult, like you adding salt to a wound.
We compare favorably and strongly to just about every other of our allied countries in terms of how strongly and actively Canadians work to get people out of Afghanistan to safety.
We will not stop looking for other paths to bring these people home.
Canada now warning people in Afghanistan to stay put while it works on Plan B.
We email and provide the best possible guidance that we can with regards to where to go, when to go.
Canada is working with allies already in talks with the Taliban about returning the airport to normal operations.
We don't know whether that will happen or when it will happen, but the argument is being presented that it's in the advantage of the country to have an open airport because it's a landlocked country, and to bring in, for example, humanitarian aid or to bring in people and to allow people to leave.
For those who already left, officials say embassies in neighboring countries are ready to receive them, and their visas are still valid.
And Ashley, what's the government's message to those who are stuck in Afghanistan and want out?
The Minister of Foreign Affairs says that he's asking people to stay calm and promising Canada will get them out and be there to help them. But right now, he says the situation is volatile on the ground and the government doesn't have all the answers. Ian?
All right, Ashley, thank you. And a clarification on our coverage of this story. Last night, we reported 2 different timelines for the Canadian evacuation flights out of Kabul. In fact, the first flight was August 4th, and they continued until the airport became unsafe and flights were suspended. They resumed late last week and have now ended. Let's turn to the town of Wheatley, Ontario now, where residents are demanding answers about the gas explosion that destroyed part of its downtown yesterday. The community of some 3,000, roughly an hour southeast of Windsor, has been living in fear of a mysterious gas leak all summer, with people twice ordered to leave their homes under a state of emergency. And officials warn there could be another blast. Jacob Barker has the latest from Wheatley tonight.
We heard a boom and the whole house shook.
This is what downtown looks like in Wheatley, Ontario after yesterday's blast that was felt for kilometers around. It demolished 2 buildings and injured at least 20 people. Those that were in the area were left shaken.
Just everything just like pow all over the place. Wood flying, blocks, every window, everything just flying.
There was a lady there that she had got cut around the throat, so I administered a little bit of, as much as I could, first aid. We, blocked the hopefully stopped the bleeding from going any further. But yeah, so unfortunately, it was mayhem. It was a lot of people that were very scared.
Twice this summer, this area of town has been evacuated due to a gas leak. The source? Officials say it's an abandoned gas well spewing out hydrogen sulfide, but the efforts to find the leak and fix it have been unsuccessful. Residents are saying their safety is not being taken seriously.
They've had 3 months to do something about this. 3 full months, and nobody's done anything other than monitor. Everybody's dragged their feet about this, and look what just happened now. People could have been seriously hurt. And I'm just not impressed with our municipal government or our Ontario government. Supposedly they took over a month ago, and we haven't seen anybody do anything.
Local officials are frustrated. They're calling on the Department of Natural Resources and Forestry to get to the bottom of it.
Asking them for a few months now to step in and look after the file because it's way beyond our resources to do that.
Your team will always put themselves at risk to save the community. They serve the community. To be in a position where we have to continually do that because of a lack of action to try and deal with the source of the danger is incredibly frustrating.
Now residents, some for the 3rd time this summer, are out of their homes, staying in hotels or with friends and family, and for how long, it isn't known. So what are you doing tonight?
I have to find somewhere to go. I'm either going to stay with some family or go to a hotel room again.
We don't know when we can go back to our place, so we're just kind of taking it day by day.
Jacob, what's the situation there tonight?
Well, Ian, it's gotten a little bit dark out, so you can't see it, but it is still pretty much a disaster on the ground there. The rubble still all over the place, and the fire chief says that gas is still coming out of the ground, meaning there could be another explosion. They can't stabilize the scene here until they deal with the source of that gas and are able to stop it from coming out. And people are frustrated. They've been out of their houses now 3 times, and they want answers. Ian.
All right, Jacob Barker in Wheatley, Ontario tonight. Thank you. Storm preparations are underway in the southern U.S. Hurricane Ida struck Cuba today and is expected to make a second landfall in Louisiana on Sunday. That is the same day that Hurricane Katrina did 16 years ago. Several people in New Orleans have been ordered out of their homes as forecasters warn the damage could be catastrophic. The pandemic is causing delays for asylum seekers already in Canada.
I'm only on study permit, and my study permit is expiring August 31st.
Up next, the bureaucratic limbo that could put lives on the line. Plus, the strategy behind going virtual.
This type of campaigning is going to become the standard in Canadian politics.
The Conservative Party's campaign play. And later, a lockdown love story.
I just put my phone away and started running towards him because I couldn't control myself.
After months apart, a cross-border couple embarks on a new adventure together. We're back in 2. Earlier, we looked at the plight of Afghans desperate to escape to Canada. Now the latest on 2 vulnerable asylum seekers desperate to stay in Canada. A teenage girl from Afghanistan, a young gay man from Syria, both caught up in red tape and terrified they'll be sent back. Renee Filipponi shares their stories.
The calm Arifa finds here is a relief amid the uncertainty in her life. The teenager from Afghanistan came to Canada as a student 2 years ago.
I'm only on study permit, and my study permit is expiring August 31st. I was really scared.
Afraid to go back, she applied for asylum last year and is waiting on any word about her refugee claim.
The situation that is in Afghanistan right now, it would be kind of scary to go back.
Not just scary, but dangerous, as many try to flee. Arifa's family is stuck in Kabul. Not only are they an ethnic minority targeted by the Taliban, but her late father was part of the Afghan army.
I've exhausted all efforts.
This immigration lawyer says normally there is a response in a couple months, but some clients have been waiting more than a year.
They can't work, they can't study, they can't open a bank account, they can't get a social insurance number.
Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada say the delays are due to COVID, and they continue to work as efficiently as possible to reduce processing times.
It's been hard because I can't really do anything. I got into all of them.
This student says he's struggling to find housing while he's in limbo. We are withholding his name because of security concerns. He came from Syria and has since come out as gay. Not only has his home country been in a civil war for more than a decade, members of the LGBTQ community also experience violence in the deeply conservative country.
I wanted to be out and like build my life on my own and not be really afraid in Syria. The possibilities I could have by just being who I am. It's just this really, like, it's a small detail, but at the same time it's a really big detail about who I am.
And for those waiting for word, it's all about possibility and their hope for a safe future. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Victoria.
Up next, inside the world of virtual campaigning.
Tell me why you guys built this studio and why you spend so much time here.
Well, my name is...
Why the Conservative Party is choosing to do things differently this time around. Plus the story behind the numbers, how Canadians are feeling about the leaders and what it could mean for election night. Welcome back. 2 weeks into the election campaign, leaders are working hard to reach all communities across Canada, including those of South Asian descent, who represent a lot of votes in several ridings in BC and Ontario. Over the years, they've transformed grassroots activism into political clout. But as Belle Puri tells us, how that influence will play out at the ballot box is an open question.
Suki turned to Min Jun and yelled, "I think she's strange."
Sandeep Sodhi's book is a multicultural cast of characters, just like her classroom.
When I read aloud to the children, they love it when they can hear an ethnic name.
Sodhi was a child herself when she and her Indian-born parents immigrated here from England.
I remember very, strongly that my father used to say we have to, vote for who was able to bring me to this country. Which political party.
Good evening, दोस्तों. एक बार फिर तुम्हारा सारा दा निੱਘਾ स्वागत है प्रोग्राम इवनिंग न्यूज़ शो ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ.
The federal election is also top of mind at this daily Punjabi news program.
There was a time when it was very important to have our symbolic representation in the BC ledge, in the parliament, in the city halls. But now things have changed because almost all parties are giving representation to South Asian communities, especially in the ridings with sizable population of South Asians.
For example, in BC, it's not unusual to see ridings where all major party candidates are of Punjabi heritage.
So then people start raising hard questions.
Those questions are largely in line with mainstream issues like housing, healthcare, and the economy, but others are community specific. Take the Indian community, for example.
I think Indian issues continue to cross the oceans and land here.
Pockets of the community are actively engaged in the plight of Indian farmers opposed to agricultural reform in that country. There's also a push to lift the ban on direct flights from India and for family reunification.
Historically, the immigrant South Asian community has been politically aware for decades. It was previous generations here in BC who fought for years to actually win the right to vote in 1947. And since then, its political savvy has been continually evolving.
You know, second generation kids who've never gone to their home country and are born here, have lived here, have settled here, their ideas are also evolving. And I think they will shape how we look at politics as well.
It's happening already.
I have empathy for what's happening in India. I have empathy for what's happening in other parts of the world, but that should not justify how I'm voting for my leader here in Canada.
So far, none of the major party platforms mention anything about India-specific issues, but the leaders have all spoken in support of Indian farmers. Belle Puri, CBC News, Vancouver.
As we end this week, differences in campaign strategy are becoming clearer. All major party leaders make public appearances, all use social media, but only one makes so much use of a virtual studio to connect with Canadians. Hannah Thibodeau takes us inside Erin O'Toole's custom-built HQ.
Conservative leader Erin O'Toole was not only ready for his campaign close-up, he built his own TV studio for it. Tell me why you guys built this studio and why you spend so much time here.
And we had to be prepared for a pandemic election.
The Conservatives are approaching campaigning a bit differently than the other parties. O'Toole spends 2 to 3 days in his studio each week, while the other main parties are holding more traditional campaigns. On the road almost full-time, but with COVID protocols in place and studios on backup in case the pandemic worsens.
Hi, Mr. O'Toole. My name is...
The Conservatives say their virtual town halls are effective, with almost 200,000 people across the country taking part.
Virtual assemblies gives you the opportunity to reach out to more people across the country, and not only to one specific region.
But there are risks. The relatively new Conservative leader can come across as stiff in an empty studio.
You can also appear at being far away. If you're in Ottawa and you're trying to speak to people in St. John or in Gander in Newfoundland, how can you get the reality on the ground?
But in a crowd, O'Toole is more energetic.
Wow, isn't it great to be together? This is the largest crowd I've had as leader.
You may not get those spontaneous moments, but you have control of what's going on.
Zane Velji is a campaign strategist.
I think it's actually kind of brilliant. They can clip certain moments that he delivered well and fight the war where they really think it is. That this election is not going to be fought in the soup of the traditional mainstream zoomed out lens, but on digital, on social media.
How do you think this could change future campaigns?
I think this type of campaigning is going to be become the standard in Canadian politics for national campaigns.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Meaning we may see less of this from all parties next time around. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Ottawa.
So how are voters feeling? Let's take a look at the CBC poll tracker the day the election was called. And as you can see, the Liberals had a significant lead, but that sure isn't the case today, with the poll tracker showing the Conservatives essentially tied with the Liberals. The man behind the poll tracker is Eric Grenier. He joins us now from Ottawa. Eric, if today's numbers were to hold on September the 20th, what would that mean for the Liberals?
Well, it would mean that the majority government that they were hoping for in this campaign, they would not be getting it. This is not where things were planned to go for the Liberals. They started this campaign with about a 7-point lead. It's now more or less a tie, and we're starting to see more and more polls that actually had the Conservatives ahead. So if this was the results on election night, we'd almost certainly be looking at a minority government. The only question of whether it would be a Liberal or Conservative one.
And what about the significance of these numbers, and in particular the increase by the Conservatives this early in the campaign?
Yeah, the question is whether the Conservatives are going to be able to maintain this momentum. And now it certainly had changed the narrative because it isn't just about whether the Liberals are going to get a majority government. It's now an open question about who is going to win this election. For the Conservatives, they've been making significant gains in Ontario, Atlantic Canada, BC. These are key battlegrounds. Will they be able to maintain that? Or is this just a case of the Conservatives getting back to their base? And this is where we'll be for the next few weeks.
And when you look at the NDP's support on the poll tracker, what do those numbers tell you?
Well, they're starting out pretty well. They had some momentum going into the beginning of the campaign. They haven't really been able to maintain it, but 20% for the New Democrats is a very good result. And that is a very bad thing for Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. They want that NDP number to come down. And if we continue to see this very close race between the Liberals and the Conservatives, don't be surprised if you hear Justin Trudeau making the argument that progressives need to get behind the Liberals to block the Conservatives. That's an easier argument to make when the race is as close as it looks.
And easy, I think, for people outside of Quebec to maybe underestimate the impact of the Bloc Québécois, but especially in a close race, they could have a big impact.
Absolutely. They still have about 27% support. They could still win 25 to 30 seats, and that's what makes a minority government more likely. They're taking so many seats off the table. But the Liberals do have about a 10-point lead over the Bloc right now in Quebec, and they want to maintain that. There is going to be two French language debates. They were really key for Yves-François Blanchet and the Bloc Québécois in 2019. The Liberals are going to be hoping this time that they'll be able to make some gains in Quebec, because with the way that things are going in the rest of the country, if they can't make gains in Quebec, there's no way they win this election.
Just seconds left, two French language debates, one English language debate, and we have seen debates can change the way a campaign goes.
Yeah, it changed 2019, saved Jagmeet Singh's campaign, and it put the Bloc back on the map. And the Liberals are going to be hoping that won't happen again this time.
All right, Eric, always great talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, a love story and a pandemic story all rolled into one.
She's been on my phone screen for like ever now, and now she's like in person in front of me. It was just amazing.
Tonight's pandemic reunion story, a cross-border romance that went from virtual to van life. That's just ahead. Welcome back. All this week, we're bringing you stories of pandemic reunions. And tonight, it's all about a cross-border couple that first connected on Tinder just before the very first lockdown. Travel restrictions kept them apart physically for months, but also in other ways brought them closer together. Now they're reunited and setting off on a whole new adventure.
Okay, I'm gonna be seeing Jerry in like 2 seconds.
It had been 7 months since we saw each other.
I was expecting her to come, and she kept texting me, "I'm almost there, I'm almost there." I keep seeing people walking down the gate or whatever.
I was super excited. I just like put my phone away and started running towards him because I couldn't control myself. Now I finally have somebody to like hug and hang out with. My name is Morgan Browson, and I am originally from small town Hardisty, Alberta.
My name is Jerry Lewis. I've been in Naples, Florida my whole life.
I don't think we would be together if it wasn't for COVID, which is weird to say because it kept us apart for like a really long time. We met on Tinder back in January of 2020. I was visiting Naples with my family in January, and I was just swiping and came across this handsome man.
And I was at the beach swiping as well.
We never saw each other while I was visiting. Once I was home, that's when we started FaceTiming all the time. And then once everything locked down, we were both not working and we were just home 24/7. We wouldn't have talked to the extent that we talked. I feel like we skipped a lot of the like first date kind of hassles, and then we fell in love. Life during the pandemic was pretty tough. We were like together all the time, but obviously not together.
It's the most frustrating thing ever. Like over the phone, FaceTiming all the time.
I went and flew down to visit in October of 2020 for 11 days.
She's been on my phone screen for like ever now, and now she's like in person in front of me. It was just amazing. It felt unreal.
And after that trip, like it just sealed the deal for us. Then it was even harder because we knew exactly what we were missing out on, not being together. We didn't see each other again until June 2021. Jer's like so caring. Like I've never had someone that's as caring as he is. Like
she has heart. She's made me into a better person. She does something here, you know, that I love.
I think what's next is living in our van. It's about 75% done at this point. We want to just live there and travel around when we can. I wasn't sure how long I was coming down here for, and it just seemed like kind of silly to pay rent because Naples is very expensive. We don't know exactly what the future has in store, but all we know is we want to be together, so we're just trying to figure out the easiest and the best way to do that.
Up next, a complete change of pace, controlling a population explosion. Chris Brown shows us a sweet treat for squirrels that contains more than nuts.
I'm Jamie Poisson. Join me for CBC's daily news podcast, Front Burner. Every weekday, Front Burner takes you deep into the stories shaping Canada and the world. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Half a century ago, the British invasion transformed music in North America. Now the UK is trying to control a very different kind of invasion from our side of the Atlantic. Chris Brown describes the sweet response.
Don't let their innocent, nut-eating ways fool you. Gray squirrels are the foot soldiers of a rodent invasion of Britain's parks and forests. But Sarah Beetham and her team think they've found their weak spot.
They love the hazelnut paste.
Using this specially designed feeder that only gray squirrels can get into, her team mixes a tasty, nutty paste with a contraceptive, rendering all who nibble incapable of reproducing.
From the studies we've done in woods so far, we're very confident that individual squirrels should receive enough of a contraceptive.
This kind of fertility control represents a breakthrough in dealing with invasive or unwanted animal species without actually having to kill them. Gray squirrels were brought here almost 100 years ago from Canada and the United States, but they're a lot more aggressive and bigger than the local red squirrel. And these guys have completely taken over. There are now 3 million gray squirrels in the UK, more than 20 times the number of red squirrels. Not only do the greys steal their food and take over their habitat, they also strip the bark off and kill majestic oak trees, which has caught the attention of Prince Charles, who helped set up the UK Squirrel Accord to try to save the red squirrel. Kay Haw heads the organization funding this work, and she says the economic damage from invasive squirrels is bad and getting worse.
Over the past 40 or 50 years, invasive species such as Japanese knotweed and grey squirrels have cost the country about £5 billion, and that is thought to be underestimated.
Why not just either shoot them or kill them in a trap and be done with it?
Culling clearly works to an extent, but it requires a lot of effort.
Giovanna Massé is one of the world's top experts on fertility control, and she's already had success curtailing wild boar populations in Europe.
They care deeply about these animals and they don't want to see them dead, but they want the problem to go away. So fertility control seems to be a reasonable option to explore.
There's still more work to do, but this research in the Yorkshire woods suggests just a few traps with the contraceptive concoction can make up to 70% of a squirrel population incapable of breeding, and that would take a lot of the swagger out of Britain's grey squirrels. Chris Brown, CBC News in Yorkshire.
I'll bet you can think of some animals you'd like to have on the list for the same kind of approach. By the way, day 3 of the Paralympic Games, Canada once again adding to its medal count.
Thank you so much.
Those winning moments, our moment, next.
Silver medalist representing Canada, Kate O'Brien.
Canadian track cyclist Kate O'Brien winning a silver medal in the 500-meter time trial. It was her Paralympic debut and an incredible comeback after a serious accident. This is the third medal for Canada in cycling at the Paralympic Games in Tokyo, and there's more. Canadian flag bearer judoka Priscilla Gagne bringing home a silver medal in her 52-kilogram category. Canada now has a total of 6 medals at the Paralympic Games. And there's a lot more on those games here on CBC Television, also on GEM, so make sure you tune in. And a reminder in terms of tuning in that I'll be back with Cross Country Checkup on CBC Radio and CBC News Network Sunday afternoon, 4 Eastern, and back on the National Sunday night. That is the program for August 27th. Good night.